10 years ago, my brother Ethan punched me in the face and said, "Trash like you doesn't belong in my life." Then he walked away with the woman who had poisoned him against me. No calls, no birthdays, no family, only silence. I didn't just survive, I built an empire. I clawed my way from warehouse shifts in the desert to the glass-walled home of a CEO overlooking the Puget Sound. And then, one morning, the silence shattered. The elevator doors opened, and there they stood, Ethan and Jessica, smiling, suitcases in hand. "Hey, little bro," Ethan grinned. "Got room for family?" They thought I'd fold. They thought time erased everything. But what I did next, they never saw coming. The last time I saw them before that day was at a family barbecue in Denver. The air smelled like pine and cheap lager, but underneath it was the stench of family betrayal. Uncles shouted over Coors Light, cousins made forced small talk, and hot dogs charred on the grill as if someone thought they were fine dining. I stood at the edge of the splintering deck, clutching a sweating red cup as if it was the only anchor holding me together. Jessica, my sister-in-law, glided through the yard with that counterfeit smile she wore like a crown. She touched my shoulder with her manicured hand as if knighting a peasant. "Still between jobs, Liam? Must be nice. All that free time." Her words sliced deeper than the laughter they provoked. "I'm freelancing. Graphic design," I said, steady. "Freelancing?" She tilted her head. "That's just a pretty word for living off other people." Ethan finally spoke, his voice slurred by cheap beer. "She's right. You're only around for food and holidays. The rest of the year you ghost us." Ghost them? I was the one who drove 3 hours to fix Dad's roof. The one who loaned Ethan $5,000 he never repaid. I swallowed it, for a moment, and then Ethan's voice rose, fueled by Jessica's venom. "You think you're better than us? You've always been nothing." When his fist connected with my jaw, I didn't just taste blood. I tasted the truth. I had no family left. I staggered to the ground, the taste of copper flooding my mouth. Around me, silence fell. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of witnesses who chose comfort over justice. I looked to my mother on the porch. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She only pressed something small and metallic into my hand. My grandfather's broken silver locket felt less like a gift and more like a severance package. No one followed when I walked away bleeding that night. Not Aunt Carol, whom I'd driven to chemo. Not Uncle Mark, whose business logo I had designed for free. No one. I left Denver 3 weeks later with 2 duffel bags and $700 to my name. Phoenix wasn't a destination. It was an escape route. The desert didn't welcome me, tested me. Summers in Phoenix felt like punishment. Heat shimmering off asphalt, apartments with broken AC units, the air itself a weight pressing me down. I learned to live small. Dollar menu dinners, sleeping on a mattress salvaged from Craigslist, 1 blanket in winter when the heater failed. At night, I walked the city streets with headphones that didn't work, just to feel less alone. I watched families laugh through restaurant windows, and it stung like salt in an open wound. Every smile reminded me of the chair at the family table that would always stay empty for me. But I also learned something out there. Silence can't kill you if you learn to make it your ally. For 2 years, I slept on a mattress on the floor of a studio so cramped I had to move the recycling bin to open the oven. I loaded boxes under the Arizona sun until my hands bled. I spoke the word family to no one. On my 31st birthday, I collapsed from heatstroke. In the ER, the nurse asked who she should call. I said no one. I pretended to dial a number, then walked 2 miles home with electrolytes and emptiness. By the 5th year, silence wasn't a void. It was a message. Ethan never reached out. Not once. Not even when he heard I'd been hospitalized. That's when I wrote him a letter. Not angry, not demanding, just asking if we could talk. Weeks later, the reply came, signed not by him but by Jessica. Cold. Clinical. You were never cut off. You simply couldn't handle the consequences of your own selfish choices. That was when grief curdled into rage. For weeks after Jessica's letter, I carried it folded in my pocket like a wound I couldn't stop pressing. Was she right? Was I selfish? Was I really nothing more than a burden they'd finally cut free? I replayed Ethan's words every night. Trash like you doesn't belong in my life. The silence in my apartment was suffocating. No birthdays, no calls, no one to share the rent hikes, the broken sink, or the small victories. Some nights, I sat on the balcony overlooking a grocery store parking lot and wondered if maybe they had been right to erase me. Who was I, if not the family scapegoat? Was I doomed to drift, to prove their point forever? But even in that darkness, a new question formed. Or was I finally free? One night, I ripped Jessica's letter into 100 pieces and let the desert wind scatter them. I opened my laptop, an ancient thing that wheezed like it was dying, and searched for computer science night classes. I didn't know why. Maybe to prove them wrong. Maybe to prove myself wrong. But for the first time in years, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt the ember of defiance. The old laptop rattled like it might die at any second, but it became my lifeline. I devoured Python tutorials, stumbled through JavaScript, wrestled with SQL. My first programs barely ran. Error messages mocked me, but every failed line of code felt better than the silence of waiting for an apology that would never come. I lived in a brutal loop, loading trucks until 4 in the morning, sleeping a few hours, then coding until my eyes burned. I had no social life, no hobbies, no distractions, just her voice echoing in my head. You'll never build anything on your own. And then, one night, my terminal blinked with success. Hello, world. 2 words. But they felt like a thunderclap. That moment became addictive. Every error fixed, every bug solved was a small rebellion. I wasn't just learning code. I was rewriting myself line by line. While other people unwound at bars or binged shows, I was hunched over a dying laptop, scouring forums, copy-pasting solutions, breaking things just to rebuild them cleaner. My neighbors thought I was strange, the quiet man who never went out. They didn't know I was building an arsenal. Sleep became optional. Friends non-existent. Meals skipped. But the more I sacrificed, the more I felt something shift inside me. Jessica's sneer, "You'll never build anything on your own," became the voice I coded against. I wanted her voice in my head, because every small victory made it weaker. When my app finally worked, I didn't see just lines of code. I saw a weapon, a way to prove that the silence they sentenced me to wasn't my coffin. It was my forge. I whispered into the silence, "Take that, Jess." 2 years later, I had built something real, a simple app that helped warehouses manage inventory. I showed it to my manager, a gruff man named Dave. He squinted, scratched his beard, and muttered, "You built this yourself?" The emphasis on yourself hit me like oxygen. A week later, Dave's brother-in-law from a logistics software firm emailed me. They wanted to talk. I walked into the interview in a thrift store blazer, sweating bullets. The manager clicked through my app in silence, then finally said, "You're unpolished, but the architecture is solid. We can work with that." It was the first time in my life someone had called my work valuable. For a while, it felt like the tide had finally turned. I left the warehouse. I bought a real desk. I paid off my payday loans. My company even sent me to a tech conference in Austin, where I ran into Noah Carter, an old classmate turned venture capitalist. He told me something I'd never forgotten. "You'll see problems differently, Liam, because you've been broken before." That night, in a dim hotel room, I began drafting the business plan that would become Bain Technologies. Years later, I was the CEO of a billion-dollar firm. I woke to ocean views in Seattle, marble countertops, and silence I had chosen, not the silence they imposed. And then my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. "Your brother hasn't been doing well." Denver area code. My mother's tone. I didn't answer. I simply typed, "If you need something, you know where to find me." 2 days later, they found me. Ethan and Jessica, standing in my foyer with suitcases, smiling like we were family again. They moved in without permission, rearranged my house, ate my food, laughed in the guest room like it was a vacation. Jessica didn't just treat my home like hers. She marked it. Her perfume lingered in the hallways. her makeup scattered across the bathroom sink. She even opened my closet and borrowed one of my favorite hoodies without asking, smiling like it was a gift she was entitled to. Ethan was no better. He drank my expensive whiskey like it was tap water, left socks balled up in corners, flipped through my records with greasy fingers. At dinner one night, Jessica offhandedly said, "Some people forget who put a roof over their head when they were just dreaming." I nearly choked. A roof over my head? This was my empire, brick by brick, built from blood and years they never cared about. They hadn't come to reconnect. They'd come to invade, to claim as theirs what they never built. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't their brother or brother-in-law. I was their safety net, their contingency plan. I held my silence, waiting, and then one night at 2:40 a.m., my phone buzzed uncontrollably. A video was spreading. My own security footage, edited and warped. My raised hands made to look violent. Jessica's fake sobs layered over blurred images. The caption, "Tech CEO Liam Thorne caught in domestic dispute." By dawn, it had millions of views. By morning, my reputation, the life I had bled to build, was on fire. The calls didn't stop. Investors, journalists, even old acquaintances who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly eager to condemn or check in. My inbox was a war zone, every subject line a dagger. Is this true? Statement needed immediately. Terminate contract until clarified. By mid-morning, hashtags branding me an abuser were trending worldwide. Strangers dissected blurry frames of my kitchen like it was a crime scene. Some said my hands looked violent. Others swore they heard guilt in my silence. I felt my empire slipping away in real time. Years of sacrifice, bleeding fingers, and sleepless nights, all reduced to a 30-second lie. For a moment, I almost gave in. Almost believed I was the monster they painted me to be. That maybe Ethan had been right all along. Then I saw Jessica's blurred face in the video. Anonymous enough to protect her, staged enough to damn me. That's when the truth hit me. They hadn't come to reconcile. They hadn't even come for money. They came for destruction. And destruction I could survive. They hadn't come to reconcile. They had come to burn me down. At first, I sat in the dark, watching my phone erupt with notifications. Friends, colleagues, investors all asking the same question. Is this true? For a moment, I almost believed it myself. That was their weapon: distortion, silence, doubt. But then I remembered. Paranoia had made me careful. After a break-in at my office, I had installed full camera backups. Every feed uploaded raw to an encrypted drive and cloud server. I unlocked my study drawer and pulled out the small, black hard drive. My insurance policy. Within minutes, I had the uncut footage. No shouting, no crying, just me calmly setting boundaries. Then I found the recording from their guest room. Jessica's voice, sharp and conspiratorial. "If we cut it just right, he'll look like a monster. No one will care about the context." Ethan's weak protest, then silence. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the monitor washing over me. My pulse slowed. For the first time in years, I felt control sliding back into my hands. This wasn't just about proving innocence. This was about ending their power over me, forever. I labeled every file, sent them to my lawyer, my PR team, and key media outlets. By the time the sun rose, the narrative would belong to me. By 6:30 a.m., my lawyer confirmed the files had been distributed. By 7 o'clock, major outlets were already calling. By 9 o'clock, headlines shifted. Fabricated abuse claim against CEO exposed. Extortion attempt backfires on Bain Technologies founder. Public opinion turned like a storm tide. Comment sections filled with outrage. Not at me, but at them. I sat in my living room with black coffee, watching the storm clouds retreat. For once, I didn't feel hunted. I felt like the hunter. Upstairs, Ethan and Jessica hadn't emerged from their room. No smug smiles. No morning chatter. Just silence, the kind that trembles with fear. When they finally came down, Jessica's face was pale under her perfect makeup. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. "Liam," Jessica began carefully, her voice brittle, We didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't answer. I just slid 2 documents across the counter. The guest agreement they had signed, and a notice of pending legal action for defamation and attempted extortion. Ethan's voice cracked. You'd really do this to family? I leaned back, calm, almost cold. Family doesn't try to destroy you. Parasites do. For the first time in my life, Ethan looked smaller than me. He had always been the towering brother, the bully with the fist. But now he was just a man realizing the tide had turned, and it was never turning back. The storm outside broke around noon, but inside, the real storm was only beginning. While Jessica scrolled frantically on her phone, desperate for sympathy that wasn't coming, my lawyer released the final clip to the press. The raw audio of her whispering in the guest room, planning to frame me. If we cut it just right, he'll look like a monster. No one will care about the context. Her own voice, broadcast to millions. By the evening, their names trended alongside mine, but not as victims, as predators. Every outlet carried the same headline. Couple tried to frame tech CEO. Caught on tape. Sponsors, investors, colleagues. Everyone I feared would abandon me. Called not to condemn, but to congratulate. My company's stock rebounded by the close of market. Ethan and Jessica's reputations were already in ashes. I found them standing in the kitchen, surrounded by their half-packed boxes. Jessica's hands shook as she tried to light a cigarette she wasn't allowed to smoke indoors. Ethan just stared at the floor, jaw slack, shoulders caving in. You ruined us? Jessica spat, her voice cracking. No, I said. You pressed record. I just pressed play. For once, Ethan didn't defend her. He didn't say a word. His silence was its own confession. By dawn, they were gone. They didn't leave a note. Only the faint trace of her perfume and the air fryer sitting abandoned on my counter. I walked past the guest room they had infested, now empty, and realized something. I didn't need to chase revenge anymore. I already had it. They had spent years trying to convince me I was nothing. And in the end, they destroyed themselves trying to take what I had built. The house felt different once they were gone. Not empty, peaceful. In the foyer, I stopped at the cracked photo frame I had fished out of a junk box years ago. Ethan had once called it trash. Now it hung on my wall with the fracture still running across my younger face. I could have replaced it 100 times, but I never did. It was my scar, a reminder of the foundation I'd built on pain. Later that week, I opened a letter confirming approval of a $250,000 grant I'd established in my mother's name for single mothers and literacy programs. Her old words echoed in my head. Don't just grow money, grow people. That night, I hosted a small dinner for my team. Their laughter filled the house in a way no blood relatives ever had. These weren't people who shared my DNA. They shared my values, my real family. As the laughter rose around my table, I realized something. Loyalty isn't about blood. It's about presence. These people had shown up when it mattered. They celebrated my wins, covered my blind spots, told me truths even when I didn't want to hear them. Mark, the intern I once mentored, now ran his own nonprofit. Sophia, my lead engineer, once slept on her office couch for 3 nights straight to fix a catastrophic bug before launch. Even Dave, the gruff warehouse manager who first believed in me, was there, raising a glass with a rare, genuine smile. This wasn't just a dinner. It was proof that family is built, not inherited, and that betrayal doesn't get the last word. And sitting there, surrounded by people who had chosen me, I finally understood. I hadn't lost a family. I had traded up. When the night was over, I poured one last glass of wine and stood at the window, watching the tide roll in steady, calm, unstoppable. The greatest revenge wasn't fire or fury. It was the quiet click of a door closing and never opening again. And that was Liam's story. Betrayal, silence, and a revenge so precise it left nothing standing. What do you think? Did Ethan and Jessica get exactly what they deserved? Or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed the story, make sure you hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next tale of karma served cold. And hey, drop a like on this video. It helps more people find these stories, and it tells me you want even more of them. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's final.